This is James Taylor, and you're listening to The Creative Life. The Creative Life podcast is a show created for you, the creative. If you're looking for inspiration, motivation, and advice while at home, at work, or on your daily commute, then this show is for you. Each episode brings you a successful creative, whether that's a musician, writer, artist, designer, performer, educator, or creative entrepreneur. They share their journey, their successes, their failures, their creative process, their insights, and much, much more. In this episode, I talk with author, yoga teacher, and mental strength coach Cara Bradley, and we talk about the process of launching her first book, idea machines, and the neuroscience of mindfulness. Enjoy this episode. Hi, it's James Taylor, and I'm delighted today to have Cara Bradley. Cara is an author, yoga teacher, mental strength coach, and former pro skater. As the founder of Verge Yoga Center in Philadelphia, she helps people combine movement and mindfulness. Meanwhile, as the co-founder of nonprofit Mindfulness Through Movement, she provides mindfulness program for more than a dozen schools in urban Philadelphia. Known as a mental strength coach to athletes, she has been training teams and elite athletes for over 10 years, including at Penn State Basketball, Villanova Football, and the USYSA Olympic Development Program. Cara is also the host of a podcast series called Real Women, Courageous Wisdom, and her latest book, On the Verge, Wake Up, Show Up, and Shine, has just been released on New World Library. And it's my pleasure to have her on the show today. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, James. Great to be here.
So share with our listeners, what's going on in your world just now?
Well, I just launched a book, which is kind of crazy. It's like a second business. I'm a really busy entrepreneur, and I never realized that having a book out there on the market is really another business. So that's what I'm deep into that right now.
And was this your first book, or have you been involved in authoring other things in the past?
Well, I authored a book a long time ago that I wrote with a friend on inline skating when I was skating professionally, but I don't really count that.
What would you say is the thing that surprised you most about doing this book launch and kind of in the process of writing the book and actually kind of getting the book out there?
Well, what's amazing about the book industry now is you really, as an author, it's on you. Unless you're a big name, it really is on you. You either make or break it. And you got to be out there on social media. You've got to be out there on so many different avenues, writing blogs, video, audio. So, like I said, it's a full-time job in itself. And it's amazing. I think the average book, they say, sells 10,000 copies, which in the scheme of things isn't a lot when it takes so long to write a book.
Yeah.
So, you got to do it as an author. You got to lean in and go.
So because when people are listening, then they often think, okay, someone gets their book deal and gets signed by a literary agent and goes on to be picked up by a publisher, and then they think, well, then the author just has to write the book, and then all these other people are going to do everything else, and they'll take care of everything else. So it sounds like that's not how it actually works.
No. And I find I'm very fortunate because I have a fantastic publisher, New World Library, which has provided me with a great publicist for a short term to book interviews like this and to get the word out. But really, I've got to show up. I mean, it comes down to what I'm writing about: wake up, show up, and shine. It's all on me to do it.
Well, we'll definitely talk a little bit more about the book as we kind of get into the show. But take us back. I mean, how did you first develop your craft, your skills as a coach and as a teacher as well?
Well, I had this wake-up call when I was 19 years old. I was a college track runner, and I was running my last college race. And I had this experience where I was an average runner. But on that day, something happened. Something shifted in me during a warm-up jog that helped me to run in a different state of mind, where I shaved 6 seconds off my 800 meters, which is kind of crazy. But that was really the turning point for me because I had tapped into strength I never realized I had. I had experienced this very calm, alert state that felt really ordinary. I felt more like myself than I had ever felt before, that I had recalled feeling. And so it took me on this journey to find out what happened. What did I do? And how do I do it over and over again? Because I knew that if I could access that state in every area of my life, I knew I would soar. I knew everything I do would I do well because it had that much power in it. And so it sent me off on this search, which led me into teaching, which led me into sitting here with you today.
So when you had that experience at age 19 and you said, okay, something worked there, I need to figure out what it was. Where did you first kind of start on that journey then to kind of discover what it was, whether it was, I'm imagining everything was going in your head, did I eat something different in the morning, or was my warm up better, or did I do some visualization thing? Where did you kind of go next with that?
Right. Yeah, it's a great question. I knew that it started during my warm-up because I had gone off on my own, which I hadn't ever done before. Usually I was fooling around with my teammates, till the coach said, put your spikes on, and then I warmed up. But that day, being that it was my last race, I went off on my own and I did this slow, very rhythmic warm-up jog. And I started to say to myself, personal best. Why don't you just beat your personal record? And so it was a mantra that I didn't realize. I was reciting a mantra to myself, personal best. What happened during that warm-up jog that I now know was I settled my mind and nervous system so that when I stepped onto the track, I was beyond my normal, habitual doubt, fear, butterflies, anxiety, nervousness that I wasn't going to have enough energy. So I used to step onto the track with luggage, the luggage in my head and my heart. And many of us walk around life with a lot of baggage that really encases us from really shining out there. Well, I had left my baggage to the side. I didn't know I had done it, but I did it. And so it was my quest from 19 onward to find out not only how I do that again, but how do I do it on purpose? Because it happened by accident. And I wanted to learn how do I turn this on when I want to? And that led me to my practices.
So now, obviously, you have these elite athletes come to you and ask for your help and your coaching so that they can have maybe more consistency in the work that they're trying to do as well, and they can just be present and on form. So when those elite athletes come to you, or anyone for that matter, they just kind of want to ensure that they're in that flow state, that state, in order to deliver their best when they need to. What are some of the things you usually start talking to them about and start teaching them and training them on?
That's such a great question. The most important thing is for us to really understand how we operate. So we spend so much time on our equipment, right? As athletes and just as people, we spend time on our computers. We get it running smoothly on our cars, clean our house. But there's this thing we have called the mind, and we spend very little time getting to know how it operates. So the most important thing that we all really need to do, which is, and I know we're going to talk about later, is the whole practice of mindfulness, but is really to become familiar with how we operate. What are my mental tendencies? What are my conditions? Like, where does my mind go to when I'm challenged? What causes me to get anxious? And so this process of becoming familiar with our mind helps us then to recognize the space when we are just present, when we are just right here. This is when we're most powerful. And that's when you can really just kind of engage the fullest version of you as well, when you have that level of presence and that you're in that kind of state, that state you first felt when you were 19. Right.
So you mentioned right at the top of the show, you're also an entrepreneur. You have lots of things going on, lots of projects. So I want to come back to the mindfulness. Before we do, I would be really interested to kind of hear from you. You know, you have all these ideas and these projects that maybe you come up or people come to you with. Where do some of these ideas come from generally? Where do you kind of go to for inspiration when you're thinking about, you know, putting together a new training program or the book or other things that you're doing? And then do you have a kind of method for then developing those initial ideas and finding out which ones you actually want to kind of carry forward and are worth pursuing?
Yes. Yeah, we are idea machines. You know, we are constantly being bombarded with possibilities. I mean, we all are. You know, I don't consider myself special at all. I think that we are all just incredibly creative, intelligent beings. It's a matter of when they surface, right? Do we recognize these ideas? And then what do we do with them? And I think that's the question you're asking. How do we bring them to manifestation? One thing I know about myself is that ideas are popping up constantly, and they often come up to my awareness more vividly when I'm moving my body. For me, that's my palette, right? It always has been, whether I'm running or walking, hiking, swimming, practicing yoga, something where I am just moving rhythmically, my mind settles, then all of a sudden possibility just comes firing at me. My first thing that I need to do is to get it down somewhere, either in a book or on my phone. So I use my notes, my little notes app on my phone constantly just to jot down ideas because they just come so fast. And so generally for me, I have a list, just an ongoing list, things to look at, things to consider. And that list just goes on and on and on. But I go back and I review it. And then from there, obviously, I can't get them all done today, but I do prioritize, maybe pull a few from there. One thing that I'm pretty confident with myself, having run a bunch of businesses in my life, is that I'm confident that once I take an idea and sit with it, it's not that hard to bring it to manifestation. We all have this, you know, it's small steps, right? What's my next step? And then what's my next step to get it to perhaps, you know, where it's either a product being sold or a service or an idea for a blog. So that's my process.
So before you engage that kind of warp speed energy to do the thing and to actually make that idea into your head into reality, I'm just interested, that kind of gap just before that point where you have all that list, and you mentioned about prioritizing the different projects that you actually want to work on, business projects, creative projects, etc. What are the things that determine which ones kind of go higher up that list? Where do you kind of go to in yourself to say, well, actually, this has more meaning for me. This is a higher. How do you judge all these different opportunities that you have?
Yeah, it's not easy because there's so much possibility out there. We can do so many things. I agree. The prioritizing, for me, it has to come from this clear space, this clear mental space, because I can run with anything. But I do know at this point, I need to sit down and evaluate. Okay, so this is for my business. I have a yoga center. How would this really serve our community, our staff? How does this serve me? Is this something that I want to look at right now, in 6 months, or in a year? Or do I put it on the back burner for now? And so I do go through this process because I know myself. And oftentimes, if I move in too quickly, I get myself completely overburdened with too much to do. And as most of us have too much to do. So there is that process of, like right now, for instance, I'm evaluating my speaker page on my website, and I know I need to do certain things. I need like a one pager that people can download. I need to reach out. But that's an area that's really a priority for me right now in my career. So I do need to spend time there. and put some of the other ideas, maybe the ones that are a little bit more fun, on hold right now.
So can you tell our listeners about a time then, as you had all these different projects and you've worked on these things, maybe at a time when you worked on something and you gave it your heart and your soul, you gave it everything, but for whatever reason, it just didn't have the desired results, the results that you were looking for initially. And more importantly, what were the lessons that you took away from that experience?
Great question. One thing I can say about myself is that I really don't have fear of failure. I think I've gotten over that after all my years. So I do recognize I have the choice to start something and to end something. And it really does, unless it affects somebody drastically out there, and most of the stuff doesn't. It's really okay to start and stop. If you've run your course with something and you just know this doesn't feel aligned. And so for me, being a yoga teacher, right, there's this sense of balance and alignment. And any of us that are real creative junkies out there sense this. Is this in alignment with the whole picture of what I'm doing right now? And if it doesn't feel like it's in alignment anymore, and it's okay that it was once in alignment, but now it's not. And that's okay, because we're constantly morphing. And so if we allow ourselves to flow with the constant change of our lives, our businesses, our projects, it's okay to start and stop. It really is. And it's so freeing, I think, to live that way.
It was funny you mentioned that, because I remember for years when I would pick up a book, and I always felt I had to read until the end of the book, even if the book was absolutely terrible. I had to read until the end of the book, because it was just something I felt, someone's invested time to write a book, and I've got to read to the end of the book. And I think actually only a small percentage of people will read past the first 10% of a book. It's terrible, but and then someone said to me, "Listen, don't worry too much about it. If the book is bad, then stop reading it. Go on to something else. You don't have to read the whole way through a book if it's really bad and you're not enjoying it and you're not getting any value." So just having that ability, as you said, in your life as well, to be able to say, you're working on something, but it doesn't feel right. There's not an alignment, as you were saying there, with your values, your vision as a creative person, to say, actually, no, it's time. I need to try and get back into that flow with what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, no, it's such a great point. And I also think as leaders, if you're managing people, as I do, you have to also recognize that your brilliant creative idea just might not land for people. In fact, just recently I created a Facebook group for all our teachers. I called it Verge Masters. And I thought, wow, wouldn't it be great for us to have this masters group where we can all just bring our interests, our mastery, and we can engage and yada, yada, And I thought, and for a few weeks, it was really vibrant. And when I got busy, it kind of fell flat. I thought maybe it would start to churn on its own, and it didn't. So, it just said to me, there's nothing wrong with the teachers out there. It's just this isn't something that is really engaging for them. It's not some place they want to spend their time. And so I'm going to, in the next few days, just kind of disband it. It's okay, no problem.
Yeah, that's fine.
Right, it's fine.
And we were talking about mindfulness a little bit just at the start, but I just kind of want to dive a little bit more into that just now. I find it really fascinating that I'm traveling now all the time. It doesn't matter where I am in the world. I'll pick up a copy of Time magazine. On the front cover, it's the mindfulness revolution, and you're seeing it just everywhere, and it becoming even hedge fund managers talking about doing having a mindfulness practice. And where before it was if people were having some kind of mindfulness practice or they were doing meditation, then it was kept quite quiet. They didn't really want to say too much about it. So it feels like there's been a change in the zeitgeist about mindfulness. Is that just me, or is it something that you're finding because you're in front of people every single day talking about mindfulness?
Oh no, you're spot on. It is the trend for sure. I was in the yoga world before mindfulness became hip, and now it's very hip. And I can tell you that the reason why it's gained so much momentum is because of the science backing it. In the last 20 years, we've had over 4,000 research studies done on the effects of mindfulness. 4,000. There's 900 being done just this year. So the results are out, and it works. It works in so many capacities. In fact, I just saw today that Forbes had an article, "Can mindfulness replace the need for opiates?" So it's because of the science. It's because that now we can study our brain through fMRIs and all these other incredible ways of researching our brain to recognize that our brains are malleable. And this is only something that we've been able to scientifically prove in the last 20 years. That the monks have known this for thousands of years, but we didn't have the proof. So that's why mindfulness is now the buzzword, is in hospitals, is in schools, because of the science backing it.
And I had a previous guest on, Dr. Noah Kageyama, who he works on peak performance, especially with members of the military and also with great classical musicians. I think he's one of the teachers at Juilliard School of Music. And we were actually talking about how there was a thing for a while there about students taking drugs of various sorts in order to calm themselves before a big performance or a test or something that they were doing as well. And he was very much the way, well, you don't have to do that. There's other means. And he was talking about some of those other means as well. When you work with, I know because you work with a lot of athletes as well, and obviously there's a whole thing all the time about drugs and competitive sports as well. Are you seeing this kind of mindfulness thing really start to take root within the sports community? Even especially those kind of sports which you tend to think of them as very kind of masculine type of sports. Are you starting to see the mindfulness thing come through there as well, in terms of a way to ensure peak performance and to have the mind in a place so the body can perform how it needs to perform?
Right. Yes, absolutely. I've been working with teams for about 15 years. And so back then, not many people were doing this, but certainly now. And so when I work with teams, and I work with college athletes, I work with American football teams. I've been working with the Villanova team for 12 years. So I've really seen a program take to mindfulness. It's been amazing. And so what I do with these football players is move them through a very simple yoga practice and guide them to look at their mind. So again, like I was saying before, we want to get to know our fears, what it feels like in our body, how it feels when fear arises, what it feels like mentally. We want to look at doubt. We want to look at what happens when we're physically challenged. Where do we go mentally? So at that moment, where do we go? And I call this the verge. So there's this moment that happens when we show up in that moment, when we're squeezed, but we're fully present. That's when we access potential, strength, intelligence, wisdom, all the stuff we need to really soar in our lives and on the field. So I'll take these guys through a yoga practice and hold them in certain poses and ask them to sit with themselves. What does it feel like to be here? What does it feel like to doubt yourself? Are you doubting that you can hold this yoga pose? Okay, now what does it feel like to be present, to be alert and focused in the center of the fire? And so what happens when we train, just like training a physical muscle, we're training our mental muscle to be calm and composed in the center of physical challenge. That translates onto the court, onto the field, right, onto the pitch. It translates. It happens then. So that because every competitive athlete, whenever they're interviewed, when they've scored that incredible goal and the announcer says, "What were you thinking during that shot?" And they always say, "I wasn't thinking about anything."
Yeah. They're in that state, that place they've experienced time and time again when they've been on top form as well. So let's talk about back to you again about in this creative journey, this life that you've had as well. Can you tell us about any any insights or light bulb moments, points in your life when you said, maybe this is the direction I need to go with the work I'm doing, or you hit a crossroads in your life where you said, okay, this is the path that I'm going to go down, for good or for bad?
Wow, I feel like there's been so many crossroads in my life. I've had multiple businesses and careers. Most of them, the trend has been to help people directly experience life. And I use the body as the palette to help us recognize what a privilege, what a gift it is to be alive. And so if I can help people get out of their head and into their body and to just show up for life right now, and I've done so in many different forms. I used to teach figure skating. I taught rollerblading. I have taught all kinds of fitness and yoga, meditation, anything that can help people relax from the rat race and to show up right now. Because I know from my own experience, when I'm here, right now, in this moment, I show up in a big way. I'm here for you. I'm listening. I'm connecting. I'm saying what needs to be said, and not too much, not too little. I trust that space. And so I really, this whole evolution has been churning and chopping away at what doesn't make sense anymore, and to really hone in on helping people show up for their lives.
And is there, apart from the mindfulness practice you do and the yoga practice you do as well, is there any other personal habits you have that you think contributes to your success as an entrepreneur, as a coach?
Yeah, I have I'm pretty disciplined in the way that I do a bunch of things very consistently. I'm not over the top, crazy, like a crazy healthy eater or a crazy meditator, or I'm Italian. So Italians are kind of moderate, right? We like to have a little bit of everything, Yeah. So I have very specific practices that I get done every day. And that is, I usually journal a little bit. I do a short meditation every day. I move my body in some capacity every day. I have some quiet time, puttering around. I find that those 4 practices help me be more creative. They help me to settle my mind, allow my nervous system to relax so that those ideas, those insights, the direction continues to arise and emerge for me.
And you mentioned your Italian heritage there as well. And I was noticing, as I was on your site earlier, and you have some amazing retreats that happen around the world, so one of them being in Italy as well. So talk to us about, the retreat experience. So maybe people are coming, and this doesn't necessarily just have to relate to yoga, but they're maybe going on their weekly music lesson, or their weekly art class, or their weekly mindfulness class. But then they go to a more intensive, multi-day event like a retreat. What does the retreat experience, do you think, do for both the student in terms of their learning, but also what does it do for you as the teacher, the person that's there to lead them?
That's so great. Great question. Thank you for asking that. Retreats are so important for us. And we all look for our next vacation. But vacation and retreat it can be the same thing, but oftentimes it's not. What a retreat does for us is it takes us deeper than we can ever get in our normal daily routine. So you can go to an art class once a week, but if you go to a 1-day retreat and you focus on that form, on that medium, it's going to take you much deeper than you can do in an hour. And so what happens then, it's almost like it raises the bar. It gives you the confidence to know that you can go there emotionally, mentally, creatively, spiritually, physically. It takes you to that, it oftentimes breaks you through any barriers that you're kind of bumping up against in any kind of creative block. It will take you beyond it. And so what happens then, we come back to our normal daily routine, and we know what new possibilities are available to us. Like for me, when I do a silent meditation retreat, and I'll do a couple a year for 4 or 5 days of silence, I find depths of my mind and my heart and of nature and of connection with life, depths that I could never, ever find in my normal daily life. I know those depths are still there as I go about my daily routine. And so my practices go deeper when I come back from retreat. Retreat's unbelievable. We should all retreat either a day or a week or whatever we can do.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I completely echo that as well. It's just this, the hurly-burly of life that we can often get caught up on as well, and social media and everything else that's kind of going on. Just making that time there for yourself to really kind of deepen your practice, whatever your practice is, whether it's yoga, mindfulness, music, art, just to, as you mentioned, it's that idea of kind of, it just raises the bar. It takes you to a whole new level you didn't even possibly think was possible in your life as well. Do you have any online resources or apps that you absolutely love and you enjoy using?
Well, yeah, I have my own app. Can I talk about that?
Yes, absolutely.
I have an app that I just launched, which supports the book I wrote called On the Verge. And the app has yoga practices, some short, I call them primer practices. They're meditation practices, mindfulness practices, real short, couple of longer ones. Like I said before, I use notes. I use my notes. I use my reminders. I send myself reminders on my phone all the time. And it really helps me to interrupt my busy mind. So we all get on these tracks during our day. And it's really helpful to have those habitual mental patterns interrupted. And so my reminders will be something like, can you meet this moment? Or overwhelm is not an option. Sometimes they're kind of, pithy sayings, but they make me smile and they interrupt me from maybe a cycle of being too intense or too serious or getting stuck mentally or emotionally in some way.
And you just schedule them on your calendar so they ping up at certain times of the day. That's very cool. That's nice as well. I like that idea.
Yeah, and I have that on my app as well. It's called Notes to Self.
Notes to Self. Well, that's great. We'll definitely put the link to the app as well on the show notes. People go to Cara Bradley at jamestaylor.me. They'll be able to find all these links that we're talking about. Another question I have for you is, if you could recommend just one record, one album, and one book to our listeners, what would they be?
Okay. Oh. Well, one of my go-to books that I'm reading right now, again, rereading, it's by Paul Fleischman, and it's called Cultivating Inner Peace. And it's stories about real people that have done very different things, from farmers in Vermont to Cezanne, the artist, and different ways that different creative people have come to find inner peace. So maybe that would be interesting to your authors. I've read it like 5 times. I keep going back to it for inspiration. Music, oh boy. I'm a reggae lover, and I just think Bob Marley's Legend, there's something in there for me all the time. It's a real mood lifter. So
it's a great album. It's a funny one because sometimes it gets played so much also in background music and other things, and it kind of washes over you. And then I was in a car journey recently where someone put it on, and then you actually listen to it again and in a different way. It's like, wow, what a great album that is! What an amazing, the lyrics and everything, just the whole vibe about the albums is great. So we'll definitely put that on the show notes. So a final question for you, Cara. Let's imagine if you woke up tomorrow morning and had to start from scratch. So all you have are the tools of your trade and the knowledge that you've acquired over these years, but no one knows who you are. How would you restart things?
Wow. That's a stumper. I don't know how much I would do different. Everything that I've done has been raw material. It's been the material for this painting, really, that I call my life. I don't know if I would do anything differently. I do know that I, as a 20-something-year-old, wouldn't worry as much about getting there because there's no there to get to. And I just would, in every moment, as I try to live my life now, I try to live back then when I was young and had less responsibilities to just experience the brilliance of being alive.
Well, that's a lovely point to end on. Well, Cara, thank you so much for coming on the show. What is the best way that listeners can connect with you, find out about your book and your other projects you've got going on?
Yeah, so the best way is my website, carabradley.net. So that's Cara with a C and .net, not .com. And on there, you can find out about my podcast, my book. I've got a YouTube channel with lots of free stuff. I like to give away a lot of this stuff because we could all use it. So you can get on my website and catch me there.
Great. And we'll put all those links on the show notes. Cara, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure speaking to you. I wish you all the best with the new book and the app, and look forward to catching up in person sometime.
Thank you. Thanks, James. Thanks, everyone.
Hey, James Taylor here again. And if you're interested in living a more creative life, then I'd love to invite you to join me as I share some of the most successful strategies and techniques that high-performing creatives use. I put them all together in a free downloadable ebook that you can get by going to jamestaylor.me. That's jamestaylor.me to get your free downloadable ebook on creativity.